hope you will bear with me for another 5 minutes. In April 2020, just over 2 years ago, I realized two things. First of all, I realized that it would be quite a while until I would be able to go back to New Caledonia and Hawaii to study those clever crows. And secondly, I realized that an opportunity had arisen under the most tragic of circumstances to investigate how human activity impacts wildlife around the world. At the time, 4.4 billion people, that's more than half of the world's human population, had been asked to shelter at home to curb the spread of COVID-19. And this created an unprecedented period of planetary calm, which was so profound that my colleagues and I felt we needed a name for it. We called it the anthropause, a pause in human activity. As countries went into lockdown, city centers became deserted, nature reserves closed their gates, and highways and shipping corridors fell silent. But social media posts at the time suggested that whilst we were sitting at home, other species started exploring new haunts. There were sightings of dolphins in the harbor of Trieste in Italy, and even of pumas in downtown Santiago in Chile. But how do we know what wild animals were really up to, given that field biologists like myself were sitting at home and couldn't study them? Before the pandemic, researchers had fitted tens of thousands of wild animals with tiny little tracking devices, so-called biologgers, as part of their routine research and conservation work. And these biologgers kept sending regular updates via satellite uplink about the animals' movements and activity patterns to the researchers who were sitting at home. What you see here is some data from animal tracking data from a public data repository called MoveBank. Every little dot here shows a tagged animal and its movements across the planet. I helped launch a global research network called the COVID-19 Biologging Initiative that taps this data goldmine. We have brought together over 500 partners from all around the world. That's wildlife biologists, conservation practitioners, it's human geographers, data scientists, and other experts. Together, we have amassed over 1 billion GPS location records for over 13,000 tagged animals. That's data for over 130 different species, from small songbirds to huge whales, from all of the world's continents and major oceans. We use these GPS tracking data to compare animal movements before, during, and after lockdown. We investigate, for example, whether animals started crossing roads more frequently when there were fewer cars during lockdown. We also look at whether animals started spending more time in urban environments when there were fewer people out and about. Ultimately, we hope that our analyses will allow us to pinpoint what exactly it is that affects wild animals the most, whether it is us humans and our vehicles, which were temporarily removed from the environment during lockdowns, or whether it is instead the way we modify landscapes, whether it is our roads and buildings and infrastructure, all of which, of course, remained during lockdowns. So what's next? Two things. First of all, we will use our initiative's findings to inform conservation and environmental planning strategies. We are not going to ask humanity to stay in a state of permanent lockdown. Actually, our analyses suggest that making relatively small changes to our lifestyles will already generate significant benefits for other species. So I see huge opportunities here to reimagine our transport networks and our travel habits. Secondly, our initiative inspires new ways of studying human-wildlife interactions. While we have a pretty good handle on what animals are doing in very remote, pristine habitats, We know shockingly little about what they do closer to home in human-dominated landscapes. I want to fill this knowledge and research gap with a new initiative, the Urban Exploration Project. Over the next 10 years or so, I want to build a global network of researchers that will deploy tens of thousands of tags on animals that live in and around 100 cities around the world. And I want to get a detailed understanding of how animals behave in these highly human-dominated landscapes. And importantly, I want to combine these animal tracking data with detailed information on human movements and the movements of their vehicles. This will be the largest tracking study ever conducted. We must urgently identify ways of forging sustainable human-wildlife coexistence. So I hope that we will use this crisis to discover how best to share space on this increasingly crowded but beautiful planet. Thank you very much.